When we're in a day in which we're waking up saying, what's going to happen next? The story of Esther serves a purpose because it reminds us that even in a time of a calamity that's far beyond our capacity to control, God is still working.
Hey everyone, and welcome to the Christy Wright Show, where faith meets personal development so you can have a bigger faith and a better life. I'm so excited because today we are talking about how you might know that you need to do something. I know you might be at a fork in the road and you're like, I don't know, am I supposed to do this? Or should I sit and wait and pray? We're gonna talk about how to know. And then later on in the show, I get to sit down with the legendary New York Times bestselling author, Max Lucado, to talk about his new book based on the book of Esther in the Bible. But first, I wanna start by sharing my own Esther moment with you from years ago. You know, often when I'm speaking at events or doing book signings, people ask me how I became a speaker because they want to become a speaker too. They think I want to write books, I want to speak on stages. You know, did you go to college for this? Is this a dream come true? I'm like, actually, no. I never imagined my life taking the path that it has. So let me take you back to 2010, okay? I have been in our company, Ramsey Solutions. It was called the Lampo Group back in the day when we had 200 team members, not 1,000 like we do today. And I was a project manager. So I started on our team to basically manage all of the youth and teen products. So think our Juniors Adventures Piggy Bank, our Juniors Adventures Kit, Generation Change, our Bible study. I was brought in to be a project manager for all youth and teen products. I'd been at our company for about 6 months at the time in the spring of 2010. And during this time, I'm just really kind of getting my bearings. Like I'm in my mid-20s, I'm super young. I sat in this cubicle that was kind of hidden back in the corner of our old building, and I'm just learning what I'm supposed to be doing. Well, in the spring of that year, someone in my department, in the publishing department at that time, had worked out an arrangement for this conference called the Move Conference for Rachel Cruz, who was Dave Ramsey's daughter, to go speak at this conference. So they worked out all the aspects and details of this deal. Rachel was still in college at the time at the University of Tennessee, and she was going to be coming on our team to be the face of the youth and teen products. She was going to speak on stages, speak at youth church events, that type of thing, because at this time, we didn't have any Ramsey personalities. We had a really relatively small team compared to what we have today. And they knew that they wanted Rachel to be able to kind of carry on like Dave has the message on speaking and writing and so on. So they work out this arrangement in the spring of 2010 that Rachel's going to speak at this conference for 20 different dates. So 20 different events all over the country in small little college towns. Rachel was going to go do a talk on money, and in exchange, they would sell our Bible study, Generation Change. Well, as they work out the details, sometime in the spring of 2010, they hand over this partnership to me. They're like, well, you're the youth project manager. You're over the youth products. This is kind of a youth project. You take it and run with it. So I inherited this, and I now became the liaison between the conference and our company. Well, about 2 weeks before Rachel is supposed to go on the road, she's literally still at the University of Tennessee. She hasn't even graduated college yet. I get the schedule. This is going to be the travel schedule that Rachel is going to do for the summer as she bounces around the country in a different city, in a different state every single day doing these talks. Well, I look at it, and y'all, it is a terrible travel schedule. I don't know if they just booked the cheapest flights possible, but there were 2 and 3 connections for every single event. You were going from New York to California to Texas to get back to Tennessee. Like, it made no sense whatsoever. You would have been in an airport 18 hours a day, only to get off your flight, get your luggage, hop in a church van, ride 2 hours to this small campus town to do an hour keynote for 1,000 students, to hop back in the van and go to sleep in a dorm to go to the next city the next day. Like, it wasn't great, okay? Like, it wasn't really what we had signed up for. It wasn't really what we had in mind. And oh, by the way, I had to take this travel schedule to Dave Ramsey for approval, who happens to be not only our CEO, but her dad, okay? So I go to him, and of course, naturally, he's like, no, this isn't a good idea. No one should do this travel schedule. This is more than we agreed to. She's not doing it. She can do 10 of the 20 dates, but she can't do all 20. This is unrealistic and really more than we're willing to do. So I, as the new liaison between our company and this conference, had to take this travel schedule back to them and say, hey, I'm so sorry. I know the conference starts in 2 weeks, but she can only do 10 of the 20 dates. Now, one of the things you've probably learned about me is I'm a kind of fly by the seat of my pants kind of girl, right? Like I'm not thinking 12 steps ahead, maybe not even 3 steps ahead. I'm just thinking how I'm gonna get through the next step, and then I'll figure out the next step. So I had not necessarily thought through how this conversation was gonna go with the conference director, but I thought, you know what? I'm gonna deliver the bad news and we'll just play it by ear from there. So I get on the phone and I say, hey, I'm so sorry. This is more than we agreed to, yada, yada, yada. She can't do all 20. She can do 10. Hey, great news. You can pick which 10. You're welcome. But no, she's not going to be doing 20. And I'll never forget this moment. Y'all, I'm 25 years old. I've been at our company for 6 months. I sit in a cubicle completely invisible to the majority of the people in our company. And I'm on the phone with this conference director, and he said to me, what am I going to do? Christy, I don't have her booked for 10 keynote presentations at 10 events. I have her booked for 20 events, for 20 keynote presentations. What am I going to do for the other 10? And without thinking and without blinking or missing a beat, I said, I'll do them. He said, can you speak? I said, I think so. Y'all, I've never spoken in my life. Unless you count in high school when I was campaigning to be student body secretary. I have never spoken publicly, professionally. I have no experience. I have no qualifications. I have absolutely no right to say that. I have no right to be offering this solution. But I saw a problem and I just decided to solve it. I saw an opportunity and I thought, I feel like I can help here. Never in my mind did I consider that I would become a public speaker. Ramsey personalities were not a thing then. I just saw a problem and I thought, well, I can help. I just saw a problem they needed a speaker and I thought, well, I guess I could figure that out. I could probably learn how to write a presentation, how to deliver a presentation. There was no ulterior motive. There was absolutely no end game in sight. I was not thinking into the future of how this is going to be my calling. I just saw a problem. And instead of telling this nice man on the other end of the phone, I don't know, sorry. I don't know, I hope you can find someone else. Or looking to my right and my left going, I don't know, maybe they can do it. Maybe there's someone else in the company. Looking around, just thought, maybe it's me. Maybe I can do that. Maybe I can solve that problem. Maybe I can help fix this situation. And that summer, I went on the road with Rachel. I went to every one of her events and ran AV and carried her props and all that. And then I would go to the next city and I would do the keynote presentation myself. And I bounced back and forth across the country doing that crazy travel schedule, by the way, which I'm still a little scarred from, to be honest. And at the end of the summer, that fall, our company identified a need for more speakers. Dave Ramsey was turning down 3,000 requests a year for speaking, and they thought, we need more speakers. So at that time, they created what was called the Ramsey Speakers Group. 5 men and 2 women were a part of that group, Rachel Cruz and me. They just slid me in that group. This was in addition to and on the side of my regular full-time job of being a project manager, which I continued to do for 5 years. I would speak in the evenings on the weekends. They just slid me in. No audition, no application, no interview, no approval. I did a good job that summer, so they thought, she can do it again. Cheryl Sandberg says in her book, Lean In, some of the most amazing career opportunities are not positions that are posted, but problems that you solve. And that thing becomes your job. I didn't set out to become an author or speaker. It was not on my vision board. It was not a prayer that I prayed. It was not anything I journaled about or ever even considered for my life. I just saw a problem. And I raised my hand and thought, I think I can fix that. I think I can help there. I think it's so easy to look around us and think someone should do something about that. Someone should solve that problem. Someone should help there. Maybe, I just want to offer today, maybe that someone is you. Maybe God has put that problem in front of you, that opportunity in front of you, that need in front of you because you're the one. Because you're the one. And you might experience fear. I did. You might experience the imposter syndrome going, who do you think you are? I did. I remember even talking to Christy and Kane when she talks about walking through the airports in Europe and seeing the faces of these women that were lost, that were missing, that had been a victim of human trafficking. And she thought someone should do something about that. And she said she felt the Lord say, that someone is you. She didn't feel qualified. She felt scared. We all, in different ways, have this moment where we see a need, we see a problem, and we think someone should do something. I just want you to consider today, if you're in this moment where you are seeing something in front of you and you feel this stirring in you and you're waiting for permission or you're waiting for someone else more qualified to come in and save the day, I just want to offer, maybe that someone is you. Pray about it, journal about it, talk to your friends about it in wise counsel. Seek discernment for if that is true. But if it is, I just want to encourage you. You have no idea what God can do with that, what God will do with that, what God wants to show you about you, himself, and his will for you if you're obedient to step into that.
We were drawn to Christian healthcare ministries because we both had young families and we wanted to have more children. And we had also just started a real estate company and needed to find healthcare coverage that would meet our needs.
We were attracted to CHM because of its low monthly costs and the ability to negotiate medical costs down.
Established in 1981 and accredited by the Better Business Bureau, CHM is here to meet the needs of your growing family or small business. Check us out at chministries.org.
We absolutely believe in it.
All right, y'all, I am so excited to tell you that our brand new 2022 goal planner is here. You have asked for it. You have told me how much you love it in past years, and y'all, it's finally here. This is your year. I know that it can be hard to set goals, and it's even harder to stick with those goals, and that's why this is the tool that's going to help you do it. You've got monthly encouragement, you've got monthly calendar, weekly calendar, to-do list, and it gives you everything you need to spend your time on what matters most to you, which is what I want to help you do in your one life. It's also gonna help you grow as a person and actually stick with your goals this year. Go to ChristyWright.com and get your goal planner today and really get it early because I'm telling you, they sell out fast. All right, y'all, I'm so excited because I get to sit down with New York Times bestselling author and my friend, Max Lucado. Max, thanks for being here.
Thank you.
You were made for this moment. What book is this for you? Do you know? This is like, if you don't get the number right, it's okay. I'm just curious. You've written so many books. Like this is incredible because you've written a ton. Do you know? Any idea?
You know, it's easy if you just focus on quantity and not quality.
Just crank them out. Give me a range, like between I
think it's like 45.
45.
Yeah, but I'm old.
You're not old enough to have 45. Okay, so what would that be? One every year?
My first book came out, I can remember this because my oldest daughter's 37.
Yeah.
And she was born the same month I received the first book in the mail.
So it's not even like you started at 18.
37 years, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is really cool. I've never told you this. You and I have chatted before, but one of your books, Traveling Light.
Yeah.
So there's a story in there. And this was, when I was 23 years old. I was going through a really tough season, like kind of a wilderness season. And I had joined this Bible study small group thing for a friend to kind of be supportive for them. And he ended up backing out. And then I just went through to follow through my commitment. And I was reading that book at the time. And there's a story in there of the guide that is going through this jungle. And I'm not going to tell it right, but he's like, whacking away at the weeds. And the person following him, the travelers, said, "Where's the path?" And he turned around and he said, "I am the path." And it's like the simplest story.
Yeah.
But the Lord spoke to me in that moment, in this wilderness where I'm going, "What are you doing? Where are you? What is the direction?" And the Lord was like, "I am the path." And it was just this moment. And that was my first time reading one of your books. But you have such amazing gift of taking a topic or a subject or a book of the Bible and really just focusing on that and unpacking it and breathing new life in it. And I'm so excited about this new one because this book, You Were Made for This Moment, is about the book of Esther in the Bible. Now, for anyone listening right now that may not be familiar with the book of Esther, maybe they didn't grow up in the church or they've heard of it, give us just a quick summary of what this book is about, what actually happens in her life and in her story.
Okay, so the Esther story, it's an Old Testament story, and it's tucked away kind of in a part of the Bible where a lot of people don't just, naturally flip to. And it's a brief story, but that's its beauty as well. It's only 9 chapters. Person could read it over their lunch break, and it reads like a drama. It takes place in 5th century BC Persia. There's nothing like in the modern day world, there's nothing like Persia was then. Persia consisted of half of the population of the world. It was the equivalent of the United States times 2 geographically. It was just immense. And so the story of Persia, it revolves around the Jewish people who lived in Persia. And even though they're the main character in this story, they were just a tiny fleck of dandruff on the cloak of the king. I mean, they were just nothing. They were small people, 3 generations in exile in Persia. And then the king, Xerxes, who's a womanizer, a heavy drinker, not a very bright guy, appear in the book of Esther. He has a henchman. He has a man named Haman, who's the first and foremost an anti-Semitic leader. And he decides that they just need to kill all the Jews. So when we are in a day in which we are facing a global pandemic, when we're in a day in which world can feel so out of control, when we're in a day in which we're waking up saying, what's going to happen next? The story of Esther serves a purpose because it reminds us that even in a time of a calamity that's far beyond our capacity to control, God is still working. Yeah. God is still working. 2 more quick points, and then we'll discuss it. So the other 2 characters, Mordecai, he's in the royal family. He works for the king. He has a cousin by the name of Esther who was drop dead gorgeous. I mean, she was a head turner. Yeah. Both were Jewish, and they kept their ancestry a secret. So the story has this intrigue to it, that he could come across so Persian that he could work for the king. She could come across so Persian that she could become the queen, sleep with the king, and never disclose their Jewish identity. Wow. So then there's this Holocaust declared. They're Jewish people. Yeah. How are they going to respond? Yeah. So that's the drama of the moment.
And wasn't it a crazy story of how she became queen? Didn't the king do this selection of all the women that were, qualified, and Esther, who's not qualified, doesn't have this incredible backstory, family lineage, whatever, and she's the one that's chosen. All the other women are getting their hair, their makeup done, and she's the one that is chosen. I just think it's so incredible to see the impossibilities, where things are turned on their head of what you would expect.
That's the theme of Esther.
And what's actually happening.
Things are turned on their head.
Yeah.
What you think's going to happen does not happen. Yeah. By the way, this is a story in a day in which we're trying to understand how devastating misogyny can be. King Xerxes was the ultimate misogynist. Yeah. He had a queen by the name of Vashti, and he commanded that she come and dance in front of his drunk buddies. And when she refused to do it, he kicked her out. That's why there was a vacancy.
Wow.
A vacancy there. And so he said, all right, we'll just have a star search contest, and I'll pick the most beautiful. Yeah. He had this huge harem. I mean, it is the degradation on every page. Yeah. Yeah. But God's working in the midst of it, and he changes the storyline so that the children of Israel end up coming out on top.
They end up being rescued.
I don't know if I'll give away the punchline in case people haven't read
that shit. No, we've got to, because we got to unpack the takeaways, because I love this, because there's the famous line, what if this is the moment for which you were created? There's the famous line in Esther, and I want to get to that. But first, let's talk about the context, because one of the things I've been learning recently is just the context is everything, especially in Scripture. So when you read the part in Esther, for those people, whenever they go read it, about Esther going to the king. In our modern world, that doesn't seem like a big deal. Like you're just going to talk to your husband. Like I would go talk to Matt, like, hey, Matt, what are we going to do this weekend?
Sure.
At this time, for a queen to go to the king, even though they are married, and not be summoned, where he did not summon her, kind of back to what you're saying with these, she could die.
She could lose her head.
That's right.
She could lose her head.
Like the nerve that took, how it was audacious.
Sure.
And putting her life on the line. So when she's having this conversation with Mordecai, where now they're talking about, okay, the Jewish people, like they have this plan to kill our people. They don't know that we're Jewish. Mordecai's like, we got to do something. You, specifically the queen, have got to do something. And she's like, there's this moment of fear and decision, which, gosh, I just love that, because I just feel so like, okay, when I'm in that crossroads, when I'm at that fork in the road and I'm scared, I'm feeling like maybe I shouldn't do this, I don't know. That doubt. It's not like people of the Bible, the heroes of the faith, were just fearless. They were just like, oh, I should definitely do it. And they go, and she's got this moment.
She had to work it through.
And he says the famous line, Mordecai says to her, what if this is the moment for which you were created?
Exactly.
And I love that you have pulled that into the title of this book. Talk a little bit about that being the crux of the moment, the climax of the story, where the decision is made. Not even that she goes, but where the decision is made to go.
Yeah, there were two inflection points in the story. You're describing one, and then one prior to that is when Mordecai refused to bow down before Haman.
Yes. Yep.
Haman, this anti-Semitic bully that was really empowered by the king to do whatever he wanted, he demanded that everybody bow before him. Well, a person can only take so much of that.
Yeah.
And Mordecai, who had suppressed his Jewish ancestry, he refused to bow.
Isn't that what started the whole thing?
That's exactly it.
Yeah.
Exactly it. Of course, then the game is over. And now everybody knows he's Jewish.
Yeah.
And so he responds by entering into a season of weeping, repentance, wailing. I mean, he's walking up and down the streets of ancient Susa, crying out to God, begging for mercy upon his people. Well, Esther hears what her uncle is doing. She sends a message to him and says, hey, straighten up, put some clothes on. We got a good thing going. So she's not quite our hero yet.
Not yet,
Not yet. And that's when he sends the message to her. Do you not know what's happening? Could it not be that you have been placed in your place for such a time as this? In other words, you were made for this moment.
Right.
And she has to make a decision. But I think the real powerful moment is she took 3 days for prayer and fasting. She took 3 days for prayer and fasting. And not only did she fast from food, she fasted from fluids. Yeah, that's a pretty serious fast.
So this is between when Mordecai said the famous line, perhaps this is a moment, she
and before
fasted
she
for 3
goes
days
to the
before
king.
she went to him. Okay.
So I think the principle there is you can stand before any king on earth if you stand before the King of Kings in heaven.
Yeah.
And that's a message that we need because we struggle in life.
Yeah.
I would encourage people who find themselves facing this level of struggle, take some time and just talk to God.
Yeah. When you read great stories and you have the hero, or you watch great movies and you see the hero, of course we all want to be the hero, right? We want to be the Esther that's like, yeah, and then I charged into the king and I was like, and this is what we all picture ourselves like that. We want to be that. But the truth is, in the moment when we face that fear and it's completely unknown, sometimes I think it's hard to discern, is God calling me to be bold and brave here?
Yeah.
Or is this wisdom like, hey, no, you could die. Let's sit this one out. You know what I'm saying? Like that discernment, because we love this story because Esther saved her people. But the story could have been very different.
It could have been.
If she had done something outside of God's will that was not his, whatever. And you can replace the variables with something else where you're going, okay, there's risk on the line. I think that discernment can be hard where someone maybe right now is listening going, hey, I feel like there's an opportunity in front of me, but there's risk involved. How do I know if it's God's will or not? And I think that's hard. What do you think?
It's very hard. It's very hard. I think 2 or 3 things. I think number 1, you surrender. I think what she did there is she surrendered. And she said, Lord, I've got to do something.
Yeah.
I've got to do the right thing. I've got to take the high road, but this could cost me my life. That's why she said, if I perish, I perish.
Yeah.
There was no guarantee. There was no guarantee for Martin Luther King. You know, when we read his stories, we realize that he was a man who faced fear every day of his life. He was afraid. And had it not been for the call of God on his life, he wouldn't have had the courage to take the stand that he took.
Yeah.
So I think surrender's essential. I think surrounding yourself with a community of people to pray and help you. She signaled to all the Jewish people in Persia, let's pray together. This wasn't a private prayer, it wasn't a solitary prayer. So I think the reason God created text messages is so we can text our
Prayer
friends.
chain. Yeah.
Say, well, I need help. I need help.
Yeah.
But then when God speaks, he'll give you the wisdom. That's the second half of this story.
Yeah.
You know, she did appear before the king, and he did say, hubba, 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 because she was so beautiful. He said, what do you want? I'll give it to you up to half the kingdom. And yet instead of immediately saying, save my people, she set up this orchestration of a couple of feasts.
Yeah.
And it's just the greatest story.
Yeah.
She
was strategic
She's
to the max.
strategic.
And
exactly.
I love that. I respect it.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, she
And
had an end game here.
Right, and she becomes the hero of her people.
Right.
She becomes the moral leader of her people at that point. And it's a powerful moment when she does that.
So one thing that's curious to me about Esther, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Max, but from memory, I feel like God is not really talked about in this book.
Right.
And so there's a little bit of kind of like head tilt. Why is this book in the Old Testament, why does it not talk about God? Can you help us understand that? What's the context around it?
It is one of two books in the Bible where the name of God is not mentioned. The other is the Song of Solomon. I think anybody who has gone through this type of struggle knows why the name of God is not mentioned. Because when you're going through a time of depression, when you're going through a time of anxiety or fear, isolation, you can't find God.
Yeah.
You cannot find God. You mentioned earlier the importance of context. Part of understanding Bible is realizing that it was these stories were originally written for a purpose in that generation. They serve our generation as well. But this book was written to speak to children of Israel who were scattered around the world, cut off from their homeland. They had no temple. They had no Torah. They had no access to all of the anchor points that they had had in their lives. So this story says, when you can't see God, we're way out here in Persia, we're 3 generations removed from Jerusalem. Or when you can't see God, when you're in a hospital battling COVID, when you can't see God because they're laying people off right and left and you're afraid you're going to lose your job, this book is for you. This book teaches what the theologians have this $2 term, quiet providence. The quiet providence. Now, sometimes God is loud in his providence, splits the Red Sea. He raises Lazarus from the dead. But most of the time, there's this backstage God, this God, we detect his fingerprints. Jesus said the Spirit is the wind. We can't see him, but we know when he's there. And he works in this mystery. And so we trust him. We trust him. So books like Esther encourage us to trust the presence of God even when we cannot see him.
Yeah, that's so powerful because I know so many people might be listening to this right now or watching this right now and they feel like they're in that spot.
Certainly.
And I think one of the things too that's so I don't know, scary about that place, when we get to that place where we feel alone and defeated or depressed, we then pile on the guilt. Well, we're not praying. It's like the guilt of like, well, we've somehow distanced ourselves from God. I just love that reminder that he is with you even when it feels like he's silent or absent. The other thing that's so cool about the story of Esther, and we see this in other books in the Bible and other stories in the New Testament as well, but I just love how God will orchestrate your circumstances. We're so scared to do the wrong thing that we don't want to do anything. And it's almost this paralysis analysis. And I just love how there is such yes, we have to take action. Yes, we have to be bold and have courage. And she did. And we have that model. But there's also something where you just watch how God will orchestrate your circumstances that aligns for you to step into the thing that he has for you.
It's just the best. This story has so many turnaround moments in it. And you're right, the 2 feasts. I just think this Haman, this bully, he was such a sucker.
Yeah.
You know, number one, he was a narcissist. I mean, anybody who thinks that they can declare a Holocaust on a world, they're narcissists.
Yeah.
Their world revolves around themselves, and that's it, period.
All because one guy wouldn't bow down to you.
Yeah.
Right.
It just
seems like an overreaction.
sick.
I don't know. Yeah.
It's just sick.
Yeah.
And so he gets invited to this feast, and he just gets a little peacock feather strut to his walk.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I'm Mr. Special. He has no idea he's being set up.
Yeah.
He's
Yeah.
being set up. Okay, so there's a parallel story here. I'm not sure if I can condense it all down here in a bite size, but I'm going to do my very, very best. So one night Xerxes could not sleep, right? The king, he couldn't sleep. So he wakes up and he calls for a servant to come in and bring the equivalent of the boardroom minutes and read them to him. How bored do you have to be?
Yeah.
So this guy just drones on and on and on about, we ordered paper clips, we bought chariots, we did this.
Right.
And then finally he says, and Mordecai pointed out that the king was about to be assassinated. And that's just a tiny little paragraph early in the book of Esther. And so the king sits up and he says, we never did recognize Mordecai. Remember, Mordecai's Esther's uncle.
Right.
We never recognized this guy. We need to do it. What do we do for somebody we want to really celebrate? And so he says, bring somebody in. Well, about that time, Haman was walking into the castle. And he was walking in because he wanted permission to kill Mordecai.
Sure.
You remember that
Right.
part?
Yeah.
And so the king has him come in, and Haman says, I want to talk to you about something. The king says, first, I want to ask you a question. What do we do if we want to really honor somebody?
Yeah. Yes, the
Haman
irony.
thinks he's talking about him.
Sure, yeah, of
So
course he
Haman
is.
starts listing, well, we give him a parade. We laid him right on the king's horse. So he wears the king's robe. And the king says, okay, do that for Mordecai.
Right. Haman's like, this is not how I saw this going.
It is the greatest
Yeah.
turnaround.
Yeah.
So he ends up spending the day honoring the guy that he woke up that day desiring to kill.
Wanting to kill. Yeah.
It's just everything.
Well, and it's amazing too because there's such a rest, there's such a confidence we can have that the God of the universe that created the stars in the sky, the heavens, the oceans, everything is for us.
He's for
and
us.
can turn situations around. I love the worship songs that says he's a way maker. You
Yeah.
know, he can make a way when it seems there is no way. When Esther is outside of the king's chambers, and she has now found out that her people are going to be killed because her uncle has not bowed down, and she's going, it seems there's no way.
Yeah.
If I go to him, I'm going to die. And all of my people, it seems there's no way. And it's just amazing how God can orchestrate anything in our favor in line with his will.
And on a dime.
Right.
And on a
Yes,
dime.
yes.
We think that if a problem took 10 years to create, God is
Right.
going to need 10 years to solve it.
Yes.
He doesn't.
Yes.
He can turn things around in a moment.
In a moment.
On a second.
Yeah, that's a really powerful reminder too, because I know when you can be in a hard season,
Yeah.
it feels like that season's going to last forever,
Yeah.
and it took you forever to deal with that situation. That it's
Sure.
going to continue to. But I love that reminder. Tomorrow you could get
Exactly.
news. Tomorrow something could change. Tomorrow a door could open. He could make a way and knock down that wall.
Absolutely.
So I love that. There's such hope in this book, and it's such a small book, like you said, and maybe an overlooked book.
It's a timely story, isn't
Yeah,
it?
yeah.
Yeah, I'm hoping to blow the dust off of it. I think it's
Yeah.
an understudied book.
Yeah.
And it's one that carries so much hope, especially for the day we live in.
Well, for the day we live in, with as a culture, as a world, but even I would say as a woman, I think it is so amazing when we get to see these heroes of the faith that are women, and how women were honored, women were bold, women were heroes
Yeah.
of the faith. It's just such an encouragement for those women that want to follow
And how she
follow the Lord.
developed in her faith, right? Because initially she was a secularized Jew.
Yeah.
She did not let anyone know.
Yeah.
But at the end, I mean, she's the hero
That's
of the
right.
Jewish people.
That's right. Well, I can't wait to read it, Max. I'm so excited. Thank you for all of your work. Thank you for
you.
just pouring into us. Tell people where they can follow you and get a copy of You Were Made for this moment. I know they're going to want to get a copy.
Any place books are sold, Amazon,
Yep.
maxlucado.com.
All the normal
Yeah,
places. Well, you're such a light, Max, and
Well,
you
thank
bring
you.
us closer to the Lord through your writing.
Well,
So thanks for being
It's
here.
a great honor.
Thanks for
It's a
teaching
great
us.
honor.
Hey, y'all, listen. I know it is so easy to feel overcommitted and overwhelmed. I have been there many times. In fact, that is exactly why I wrote my new book, Take Back Your Time, The Guilt-Free Guide to Life Balance. Because you know what? I don't believe life balance is just something you do. I believe it's something you create where you can have balance even in your busy life. In this book, I give you 5 practical, tactical steps that you can take to create your version of balance so you can shake the guilt and actually enjoy your life right now. Go to ChristyWright.com and go ahead and get your copy of Take Back Your Time, the guilt-free guide to life balance today. All right, y'all, I'm so excited because I get to answer your questions and take your calls. And we're going to go ahead and go to Des Moines, Iowa with Tracy. Hey, Tracy, how are you?
Hey, good. How are you?
Great. What's going on?
Hey, I just had a question for you. I've kind of been off and on doing a business. My husband and I have been in it for 4 years. I say business loosely. I'll use that, super loosely. So I'm just wondering, how do you move forward with continuing, this business when you don't really feel liberty from the Lord? There's always feels like something's in the way, like my husband and I would do these trips, like go to convention or meet with somebody, and like it would be when there was tension between us, and we've been married 10 years, 11 years. And it's always like, is this really what the Lord wants us to do? So I'm just kind of like, I don't know how to move forward, I guess, or if I should.
All right. I have so many follow-ups to this, Tracy. So many follow-ups. Okay. What is your business?
So it's an essential oil business, a money marketing thing.
Okay.
Or multi-level marketing, I guess.
How long have you been in it?
Well, we've been doing the natural route, if you will, like a good maybe 5 years, like ourselves, right? And
you've been consumers, yeah.
Yes. And so we've never really, I think in the beginning, like we pursued the business side of it. But lately, like we just had a daughter 2 years ago. So we haven't, done anything business side of it. So I would say in that 5 years or 6 or whatever, only, I don't know, a 6-month period, maybe a year, we really pushed it. And it's just, that's when we're like, something's not right. And why
are you doing it?
Said to ask questions. And I'm like, well, let me figure it out.
Why are you doing it?
Honestly, I would do it for the financial side.
You want a source of income.
Right, well, so my husband works outside of the home, and it would be something I could do from home.
Yeah, but
originally,
there's a lot of things you can do from home. There's a lot of things you can do from home. Why do you want to do this? Why did you get into this?
I would say the natural aspect of it. Okay. And I believe that it helped us get pregnant. I'm going to try not to get emotional, but
that's okay.
We weren't able to have kids, and the Lord blessed us with a daughter 2 years ago. And I believe that the natural method had a huge play in it, right?
Okay.
But the Lord is first, and I don't want to give glory to natural ways and take away from His blessing, if that makes sense.
Yes. Yes, it does. Okay.
So I try to be real careful with that line,
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So you love the product. You want the income. It makes sense to sell product for the income. So I get the business why behind it. Let's go back to where you feel like things are always in the way. So I want to dig into that a little bit. And again, I want to be cautious here because this is delicate when you're talking about like what God is leading you to do. I'm not going to be someone, Tracy, that says God is saying yes to this or no to that. I do want to dig into it with you, maybe help you discern that for yourself or set you on the path where you can discern that for yourself. So talk me through these hurdles. Unpack this for me. Is it like an inconvenient coincidence, or is it like a check in your spirit that there is some angst, some tension that you're not doing what is right? Even if you can't explain it, it's totally fine if you can't explain it in the practical. There have been times, Tracy, where God has convicted me on something that in the practical is not wrong. It's not immoral. I'm not doing it, but there's something God is checking in me and I can't explain it, but it doesn't really matter why. God doesn't have to explain Himself to me, apparently. Mm-hmm. So I want to dig into that. Is it like an inconvenience? You hit a traffic light and it's like, well, that's inconvenient. Or is it like, I've got to check in my spirit that something is off here?
Yeah, I think it's the latter, because I will liken it. Every time we went out, to talk to people about it, it is very similar to salvation and talking to people about the Lord. And why do I have a problem witnessing to people when I don't have a problem sharing essential oils? Essential oils in the long run are not going to matter in the grand scheme of things. Can I help people, today on earth? Sure. But in my opinion or eternity matters. So I felt like I was putting the oils above the Lord, and it's like we can go on these trips, to learn about it, but we can't go out visiting, people that need the Lord.
Okay.
I don't know if that makes sense or answers your question.
It does. I'm not gonna disagree with you on that. I will challenge you that I think that to me, to hear a jump of you talking about a product that has helped you is putting them before the Lord. Tracy, I tell people about dry shampoo all the time, how it just helped me save some time. But I don't think that means I don't love Jesus. I think it just means I'm trying to help them with their greasy hair. Okay? So I want to be careful to make these salvation statements in the practical products we're just trying to share with friends. But let me ask you this. When you're talking to people about essential oils, are you talking to them about the oil itself and how it helped you, or are you recruiting them to be a part of the multi-level marketing downline? Neither's wrong here, but this may point you to what your discomfort is.
I would say I don't share as much as I probably should. My husband shares more, but he doesn't necessarily he has skin issues, if you will, so he's cautious. But I share what helps, if somebody's having something, then I'm like, you should try this. Mm-hmm. But a lot of people think you're wacko. Yeah. So, yeah. I don't know that I do it for the business side of it, that they would join for the business side. I think that's would come in time, because it sells itself basically.
Can you make decent money at this just selling the oils? Tell me the truth, Tracy.
Yeah, people make the most money. It's not from other people joining the business. It's
from the oils.
Retention rate.
From the oils.
Yes.
Okay.
And
All right. I'm gonna land this plane. There's a lot to this, but I'm gonna land this plane and try to give you something that is helpful as a formula. Hold it loosely, because when we're talking about the spiritual world and formulas, that gets a little weird. But let me just say this. If in your reflection time, in your prayer, in your journaling, in your experience, when you pursue this business, whether it's talking to people about the oils or talking to people about the business or whatever, if you feel a check in your spirit that feels like God is asking you to pause, to do an about face, to not do this, always, always, always obey. Even if you can't explain it. Even if people don't understand. Even if in the practical, there's nothing really wrong or immoral. If the Spirit leads you, convicts you, prompts you, calls you, you always, always, always obey. And sometimes you might know why after the fact, and sometimes you may not. But this is the faith walk that we're all in. If in your journaling time, that's what you discover, always obey. If in your journaling time and your prayer time and your, reflection, you find that you're just scared of a business and you're just uncomfortable selling, you're uncomfortable marketing, you would feel weird talking about it if it was hair bows or fitness classes. You're just feeling a little awkward because it feels personal and you're scared of rejection and you're not sure how to market. I just got off stage, Tracy, talking to over 1,000 business leaders on how to market their business. It is very normal to be uncomfortable talking about your business, talking about yourself, your services, what you do. Certainly in your business, Tracy, because multi-level marketing has such a stigma attached to it and essential oils, people look at you like you're crazy. Yeah, that's hard to talk. That's even harder to talk about. So if you find that it's just a fear of marketing and a skill that you don't have yet, well, I can help you with that. I can help you with marketing. I'll send you a copy of my Business Boutique book. If you'll stay on the line, our team will get that to you. If it's marketing. If it's not marketing, all the best marketing practices in the world can't help you because God is asking you to do something different. And I'm always going to be a person, while I can't tell you what God is or is not saying to you, what I can tell you is always, always obey. And I have found in my life, and I want to be careful with how I say this, but I have found in my life that obedience precedes the blessing. We don't obey because we're going to be blessed, but typically in Scripture, you see this theme in Scripture. I've experienced this theme in my life that when I obey, maybe not immediately, actually often it's not immediately. Often it gets harder. I obey and it gets harder. I obey and God asks me to, stretches me further, asks me to take another step of faith, trust Him more, do something even harder. But ultimately at some point, there is blessing that you get to participate in simply because you walk through the door of obedience. I don't know what that is for you, Tracy. That's between you and God and your husband and wise counsel. But I do want to encourage you to try to check that feeling in your spirit. Is it just a fear that you don't know how to market, that Business Boutique can help you with? Or is that the Holy Spirit going, this is not for you? You don't have to know why. You just need to know that it's not. And you can trust that God has something better if that's the case. I just hope that that the Lord speaks to you in this journey, Tracy, and I'll be praying that He does. And if it is just marketing, you're going to have a Business Boutique book in your mailbox that can help you get comfortable with talking about your oils, talking about your business, talking about the natural pathway that made a difference in your life. And I hope that helps you either way. I really pray that God guides you on this journey. Thanks for calling. Thanks for your question. Thanks for your heart behind it. All right, you guys, I love hanging out with you. Thanks for calling in. Thanks for sharing your story, asking your questions. Of course, you can tune in next week for another new episode of The Christy Wright Show. And as always, for more encouragement on becoming the person you want to be, you can visit ChristyWright.com.